Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. So, as Fakir Mahaprabhu used to tell us sometimes when he would sit down, of course he would sit down and give amazing classes, but he would start off and say, this is not actually a class. And so that's what I feel like tonight. This is not actually a class. Don't take it very seriously. We're just having a meeting with some dear friends. And when I get to see Dave Madhav Prabhu and Dr. Reed there and Jai Gaur, who's always hiding, Bana Biharni somewhere behind him. Leela Purushottam Prabhu is there also. Madhupati Prabhu. Nice to see him. Krishna Kuni is also here. Daiva Singha Prabhu. We have a few friends some of you may not know so well. And Madhavi, Madhavi, you wrote me such a nice email and I haven't replied. Sometimes you have to remind me. There's a lot going on. Can I just say something a little personal? You're not going to refuse me, I don't think. I want to just share some excitement with everybody. We have this project we're starting soon. Let's see here if I can show you something of it. I think I can. We're starting something called Gora, which some of you know something about already. Can you enable me to do screen sharing? Whoever's the god of Zoom here. Am I enabled now? Yeah, I'm enabled now.
Should be. Okay,
let's see. This is a logo that I made today that I'm going to work on a little more for Gora. And you see on top is the words G-O-R-A, and underneath is a compound word. An interesting thing that I did, I don't know if anybody here reads Indic languages, but the first three syllables there's actually one syllable, is go in Bengali, and then the second is Oriya, and it says Ra, and it's a long A. So the name Gora is a name for Gauranga Mahaprabhu, and it means that person who's Govinda Radha. And for us, Gora means the Gaudiya Research Association, and we've recently let's see if I can find another thing here. Having some discussions about this. And just today I was working on a logo and kind of a poster. This is a poster for it. Drita Prabhu will probably do something a little more for it. It's cool. It's a really exciting thing, and I'm really pumped up about it. And I just want to share with you a couple books that we got today. This is a Chaitanya Bhagavat by Ishvara Das. This is a 500-year-old book. This particular book's not 500 years old, but it's a very out-of-print book. This is probably 50 years old or something. Difficult book to get. And it's about Mahaprabhu's pastimes in Orissa. Very old, authentic book. This is the Gauranga Charitamrita, which we also just got today. This is a book I got in Bengali some years ago, actually. This is called Gambhira Shri Gauranga, and this is about Mahaprabhu's pastimes in the Gambhira. This is written by Rasik Mohan Vidyabhushan, who is a friend of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Amazing book about Mahaprabhu and the Gambhira. So we're working on those books, but the first book we're working on is this book. This is published by the Orissa State Museum. And for those of you, I'm sure everybody here online reads Oriya, especially Jaigore, right? This says Roy Ramananda Padavali. So this is a collection of songs written by Roy Ramananda. As Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj once famously told Radhanath Maharaj, it don't get no better than that. So we're really excited about that. And there's a whole thing coming up here. Maybe Madhupati Prabhu is going to give us some expert advice. Maybe Jaigore is going to come and do some kind of construction work with us. I don't know if Dave Madhav will let him go or not. Maybe he won't.
More up to Modi than it is to me right now.
But we have some long-term goal to try to open up a research institute which is accredited with different scholarly, different universities, and can offer through them BA, a master's degree, a PhD, and do studies in Gaudiya Odia literature. And we'll have secular scholars working there, but also good devotee scholars like our friend Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj, or there's a number of different devotee scholars who are interested to work with us, perhaps Gopinath Acharya. We're trying also want to get local experts, local like kirtan gurus. I want to get some local Odia kirtan gurus who can teach traditional Odia kirtan. And I think Jaigore will come and spend some time with us if we do that, because he loves. And we want to keep that tradition alive. And we want to teach something about spiritual ecology. We're hoping that Anapayani Radha might still be able to tolerate us and do that, and teach something about the tradition of ecology and being close to the land in Orissa, and how they build houses and how they do things like that. So anyway, I'm just exploding with all this. There's two people who entered the waiting room. So Dave Madhav Prabhu, you're the god of the Zoom program here. Can you let them in?
Oh yeah, let them in. I think I made you the host actually, Prabhu, so you could share.
Okay.
That was the
All right.
expedient way to do that.
So I'm not sure what I do here. I just say admit Mukunda Ashray Prabhu, and I think that's it. Everybody's there. So I just wanted to mention a little bit. That's what I'm exploding with right now, and there's a lot going on. So many things. Brajabanita, oh my gosh. Okay, let's see here. We have to admit Brajabanita. You don't know Brajabanita. She's a cat lady from Israel, and she's a dangerous person. If you don't let her in, she's like an Israeli terrorist, you know, it's a dangerous thing. So anyway, she's there. So tonight we had this topic in front of us that we wanted to speak something about how in a kind of ironic way, in an amazing kind of way, that our stumbling, our falling down, there can actually be assets on the spiritual path. Now, at the outset of this discussion, let me make a comment that our internet connection this morning, we gave a class and it just dropped. It just didn't work. And we've been having some trouble with it. So if that happens, Ananda Murari Prabhu, Hare Krishna, nice to see you. If that happens, then just hang out for a little bit and we'll try to come back on. I have another backup internet connection. We'll try to Ananta Gauranga Prabhu. Ananta Gauranga is there also. Hare Krishna. Nice to see everybody. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with this discussion. I wanted to read you something from a famous letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote to a devotee named Brenda. This is on the 14th of October, 1971. Actually, let me just paste this in. Rajabanita, you can't hear us? Somebody
Yes,
needs
yes,
to...
now I can hear you. Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
please
Sorry.
mute yourself. We'd love to
Yes,
hear your
yes.
voice, but please mute yourself. Everybody, please mute yourself. Otherwise, that's the first offense against Zoom discussions is to be unmuted. But we'd like to request Dave Madhav Prabhu. Could you read this nice quote from Srila Prabhupada? Unmute yourself first.
I have noted your several complaints against the devotees, but it would be better to set the example rather than to criticize the defects of the devotees. We should always remember that we recruit members from people in general. It is not expected that every one of our members should be immediately to the standard qualification. The best thing for you is to set the example by your personal behavior and try to reform the others, not by criticizing, but by friendly behavior. If sometimes there are any disagreements, we should try to forget such incidences and be always in friendship with each other.
This is, for me, this is like a Mahavakya, Srila Prabhupada's words here. One thing I found over the years, doing research in Orissa, in different places in India, and meeting with different sadhus, I really appreciated Dave Madhav Prabhu's comments about how important it is that we should be able to appreciate sadhus in different institutions, different groups. We should be able to appreciate everybody. And if you can't do that, you're not a preacher. Everybody. And if they come with you, that's preaching. So it comes when we read this excerpt from this letter from Srila Prabhupada. Why does this have to even be said? That's an obvious question, isn't it? And the devotee who Prabhupada is writing to, he's saying, I've noted your several complaints against the devotees. So our next question is, this is a brand new devotee. This letter was written in 1971. The person who's a devotee, they'd hardly been a devotee at all. It means probably they've been following the regulated principles for 6 months or maybe 1 or 2 years, like that maximum. They barely knew anything about Vaishnav culture. But we understand from this letter that Srila Prabhupada's writing, I've noted your several complaints against the devotees. So my first question that comes to my mind when I look at this is, what's going on? Why is this very new person registering all these complaints? So this is a sociological phenomena. If you study sociology of religion 101, you'll find that in conversion, there's fanaticism. Because when you become a Hare Krishna devotee and you were previously a stoner or a jock or whatever they want to call you when you're growing up in America, for those of you who don't know those colloquial American expressions, you lose all your friends. When I joined the Hare Krishna movement in 1982 in Los Angeles, it was a death sentence for all my friends. And nobody followed me. I thought they would, but nobody did. And to this day, practically none of them want to contact me because they're all weirded out by it. That has something to do with my character, not anything to do with the movement. But so you come, and I was a bhakta leader for some years in Los Angeles, and I saw many people, we'd make friends with them. They liked Krishna consciousness. They would join the temple. They decided to move in. And the first thing is we'd shave their head. And that was such an existential crisis for a lot of them, because a lot of them kept their identity in their hair. And if it wasn't in their hair, then it was in their jeans, their Levi's jeans or whatever they had. If it wasn't in their Levi's jeans, it was in their record collection. You can tell how old I am. I actually go back to real records. It was in their record collection. And all of a sudden they have to give all that up. That's their identification. And they don't fit in. So how can they fit in? Because everybody wants to be accepted. Everybody wants respect. But all of a sudden now, I remember I was in Kirtan, and I don't think I'm the only person that this has happened to. And all of a sudden, the knot that I tied in my dhoti came loose, and the dhoti went falling down. I had to grab it real quick. It's like, what a crisis. My God, I don't even know how to put on clothes that are not going to fall off my body. I don't know anything. I don't know the songs they sing in the morning. And so what do we do to make up for that? And I remember myself, just to give an example of what a bad example I was. I'd been in the temple for 3 days, and I phoned my mother. My mother picked up the phone, and the first thing I told her, I said, Mom, repeat after me. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And that was the first thing that I did with my mother, poor woman. And for some strange reason, she started crying on the phone. So when we're in such a situation, we can't be ourselves because we don't know who we are. And so then we have to try to be something that we're not, and some strange idea. And so at that time for myself, I had long hair when I first joined, and I was jumping like a maniac in a kirtan. And I remember I impressed some of the new bhaktas very much. One of the new bhaktas told me, he said, man, you're going to become a sannyasi in like a year or two. And probably you become a GBC and a guru within a year or two after that, because I was such a fanatic to dance in all the kirtans. Now, why was I doing that? Well, the kirtans were nice. Agnidev Prabhu was leading, and Pushpadanta Prabhu. We had some good kirtan leaders. But honestly, a lot of it was just that I was a very confused person, and I wanted to fit in. The sociological phenomenon of religious conversion. You don't know the language. You don't know the philosophy. You don't know the culture. And so to make up for that, you want to become a fanatic. And this is what I see in this letter that Srila Prabhupada is writing. He said, I've noted your several complaints against the devotees. This is a brand new person. It's 1971. Someone in Germany who joined in Germany. They could not have been a devotee for more than 2 years maximum. And they're writing, they're complaining against all the devotees. So this is a phenomena that goes on, and this is something which destroys our movement. And therefore, Prabhupada goes on to say, it would be better to set the example rather than to criticize the defects of the devotees. And in this letter here, I see Srila Prabhupada being very, very tolerant. And he's not criticizing this new devotee. He could have chewed her head off. He could have said, what kind of nonsense are you? He could have told her so many things, but very gently, he said, better you set the example rather than criticize the defects of the devotees. We should always remember we recruit members from people in general, and it's not expected that they're all going to become perfect. So we can say that Srila Prabhupada is speaking like this, but that's because he's preaching to new people, to someone who barely knows which hand to clean themselves with after they pass stool. Such a new person. But now I've been a devotee for 5 years, or I've been a devotee for 10 years, and I'm really sophisticated. I know 10 verses from Bhagavad Gita. I'm almost an incarnation. And, we expect something higher now from all of this. Well, let's examine that. Let's think about that a little bit. I'd like to take you on a little journey today to something I was reading. This is from the Valmiki Ramayana, from the Kishkinda Kanda, from the 30th Sarga of it. And it speaks about the agony of Lord Ramachandra. It's a very beautiful section. Actually, I have a wonderful book here. Just to get distracted for a moment, you see this huge book, which I paid 500 rupees for. It's like, I don't know, a few thousand pages. This is an English poetic translation of Tulsidas's Ramcharit Manas, which is done by a Christian missionary, whose name I forget, but it's right here in the beginning. He came to India, Reverend A.G. Atkins. He came to India to preach about Christianity, and he had to learn the language, so he started reading Ramcharit Manas, and he fell in love with the book. And he's a fanatic Christian. the book and he translated it into like Shakespearean poetry. It's just beautiful. Can I read just a line or two? I like poetry. Some of you guys also like poetry. Let me just open up just a random open. Let's see, what are we trying to find right now? Okay, I'm just going to open randomly and see what we find here. Okay. So this is Guha. Guha was one of the persons in the forest when Lord Ramachandra went to the Dandak forest. And he's speaking to who? He's speaking to Bharat when Bharat went following behind Lord Ramachandra. And he told Bharat, Guha said, due to nothing but fate is this sad, sorry state. Thus the mind of your mother was turned. Ram, when here he stayed, highest praise to you paid, and from him of your good learned. Now I say, knowing both, yes, I swear on my oath, none is dearer to him than you yourself. You will surely exult in a happy result. Be then patient in Ram's behalf. So he did this wonderful poetic translation, and he also translated some very nice poetry of this section that I want to read from, but I couldn't find right now. But anyway, this speaks about the feelings of separation of Lord Ramachandra from Sita and how he's crying. He made friends with Sugriva. Now, Sugriva is like the original New Bhakta, right? Sugriva, he's a monkey, right? That's what we were all like when we joined. We're like New Bhaktas. We're like monkeys, right? New Bhaktas are like monkeys. So Sugriva is like the original New Bhakta. Monkeys are not real famous for being great renunciates and sense controllers and getting up early in the morning and taking and doing all like that. But he had the good quality of surrendering to Lord Ramachandra. And Lord Ram assisted him by killing Bali, his older brother, who had kidnapped his wife Tara and forcibly taken her away. And Lord Ramachandra, on behalf of Sugriva, he killed Bali. So we all know that story. And Sugriva agreed to lend his army to help Lord Ramachandra to find Sita. But then something happened. It was the weather. The rainy season started. And for 4 months, it wasn't possible to move. So this is a footnote for those of you who follow Chaturmasya. We fast from certain vegetables and certain things different times of the month. And I don't want to say anything really controversial. Dave Madhav won't ask me to give class here again, but anyway, I'm going to go for it. I heard this from Hari. Sorry, I spoke to who's the other very famous servant of Srila Kirti Prabhu. Both of them, I asked them the same question. Did Srila Prabhupada observe a yogurt fast, a milk fast, a spinach fast, all those different, and while he was traveling? And they both said no. But Prabhupada liked it when devotees did it. So why do we do those things without getting into a whole bunch of rituals here? Why do we do those things? Because during the rainy season, you can't move. And during the rainy season, the milk, during that particular month, the milk is contaminated because there's so much water on the ground. And when the cows are drinking that water, their milk becomes affected and it's not healthy to take it. We don't take the spinach at that time because there's lots of little bugs and things on it. But when I go to Ypsilanti, there's no rainy season. When I go to Israel, there's no rainy season. And we may do these things. If we do them for devotion, that's nice. But if we do it just because I want to be part of the Hare Krishna movement and I should be accepted, and if I drink milk during Chaturmasya during this month, then nobody's going to like me, that's not very inspiring. It's not very inspiring for new persons. You okay? Please sit down. Lay down if you need. Okay, we have a medical patient who just came here in the room. We won't say any names. I don't want to embarrass them. So going back to our story, Sugriva was going to go with his army to find Sita. But the rainy season came, and during the rainy season, you just cannot move on foot in India. That time, the roads are all muddy and things. And so for 4 months, nothing happened. And during those 4 months, Lord Ramachandra was crying and crying and feeling so much separation from Sita. And there's some beautiful poetry about, there's some beautiful songs about that. I don't want to go in that direction right now. But at the end of the rainy season, Lord Ramachandra was saying, now the rain has stopped, and he's excited. Now Sugriva's going to come, and he's going to go and get Sita. But Sugriva didn't show up. Why didn't Sugriva show up? Okay, this is a little controversial because Sugriva was like the temple president in Kishkinda, all right? But Sugriva, what was he doing? Well, he'd been a monkey, and for a long time he was living in the mountain, in the Dundak forest, because his brother wanted to kill him. And he couldn't do anything, and he was just living on fruits and roots and things. But now all of a sudden he was made the king. And all of a sudden he's got all kinds of opulence and sense gratification. And he's hanging out with a whole bunch of really extremely beautiful monkey girls. And he's got all kinds of alcohol and things. And he was, to use a colloquial expression in America, he was drunk off his face. He'd been drinking like anything. And he'd completely forgotten about his service to Lord Ramachandra. So we want to speak something today about this dynamic, about how our fall down, our stumbling on spiritual life can actually be beneficial to us on this spiritual path. And this is a brilliant example. We read something from this letter about how this new devotee was wanting to criticize people for the slightest little wrongdoing. I mean, maybe they're picking their nose, or they're chanting japa, or doing some terrible thing. They're not getting up for Mangal Artik or whatever it was. But now we're talking about something very serious. And we're talking about a devotee who's an associate of the Lord, a personal associate, Sugriva. And he had the most important service you can possibly imagine. I want you to get my eternal consort and bring her back to me. Help me with this. And he was indebted to Lord Ramachandra. Lord Ramachandra had given him the kingdom. But instead of doing that, he was completely drunk, intoxicated. He's breaking probably at least 3 of the regulated principles. We can imagine he's probably doing some gambling also. Maybe he was a vegetarian. I'm not sure. Sometimes monkeys eat insects and things. I'm not really sure what he was eating. We don't hear any description of that. But probably he was a vegetarian. But he wasn't following at least 2 or 3 of the regulated principles for sure. And when Lord Ramachandra saw that he wasn't coming, Lord Ramachandra became very angry. And he called for Lakshman, and he said, Priyavihine duharte hriyaje vivasite kripam na kurute raja sugrivo mai Lakshmana. He said, hey Lakshman, that this Sugriva, he doesn't show any proper respect to anyone. Priyavihine, I'm separated from my Priya, from my most beloved. Dukarte, I'm suffering and so much. I'm grief-stricken. My heart's broken. And this Sugriva, he's not showing up. So this guy is such a rascal. And Lord Ramachandra became very, very angry. And this anger, we can understand, Valmiki Muni reveals here, is partly because of his heartfelt feelings and separation from Sita. And he goes on in the next verse. This is text 69 of this 30th Sarga. Sakalam parisankyaya sitaya parimargane. He says, this guy, this evil-minded guy, is such a rascal. The time has come to go and search for Sita. Sakalam kala, the time has come. But now he's failed his promise, but he doesn't even realize it. This guy is such a nonsense rascal. And he says, Asam samsrutyo yohanti saloke purushadama. Someone who's made a promise to a friend that I'll help you, I'll do this thing, but then fails to fulfill that promise. He's purushadama. He's the lowest person on the earth. This is Lord Ramachandra speaking about Sugriva. He says, Satyena pratigrinati savira purushottama. Someone, on the other hand, who honors his promise, that person is Purushottam. He's the best among men. Satyena pratigranati. That person who keeps that the honesty, that promise. But on the other hand, kritarta. Hyakritartanam mitranam na bhavanti ye. Someone who's gotten his objective, just like Sugriva, he got what he wanted. I made him the king. Or some people may say, don't mind me saying as Dave Mahaprabhu, please forgive me, but we made him the temple president. We gave him that big position. He's got his objective. But still, he doesn't appreciate. He doesn't appreciate his friends. Mitranam. Now all of a sudden he's become a different kind of person. And this is something that we see, to be very blunt. This is something that we often see in spiritual life, in all kinds of organizations. Someone, when they're just a regular Joe, they're your good buddy. But then after some time, they get a big position, and they don't even want to remember who you are. This happened to Dronacharya when he was a young boy. That Kripacharya, was a story? Kripacharya was a friend of Dronacharya, yeah. And Dronacharya had promised him that you and I, we're brothers, and whatever I have, I'll share. And Kripacharya later came and said, look, I don't even have milk to feed my son. I can't, so could you please just give me a little something? And Dronacharya acted like he didn't even recognize him. And Kripacharya became angry and said, look, I'm going to get you. Now, before when we were friends, when you were nobody, you were good friends with me. Now you become a big person. And you don't even want to speak.
I'm sorry. It was not Dronacharya and Kripacharya.
It wasn't Dronacharya, it was Drupada.
No, it was Drupada, yes.
Yeah, Drupada.
Drupada
Yeah,
and Drona.
Drupada. Yeah, Drupada. And Drona was involved later on. So Drupada was a friend with Kripacharya. Thank you very much, Brajabani. That was a good correction. Thank you. So such a person, now he's gotten a big position, and he forgets who his friends are. That is such a bad thing. Lord Ramachandra says that even such ungrateful persons, even carnivorous animals, after that such a person dies, the carnivorous animals want to eat their body. The dogs won't eat their body. The crows won't come and eat their bodies. Such terrible persons. So he told Lakshman. He got Lakshman really pumped up. It doesn't take a lot to get Lakshman pumped up. Lakshman is already a very angry person. Lakshman loves to fight, and he loves to defend his Lord and Master, Lord Ramachandra. So Lord Ramachandra told him, Uchitam Gacha Sugrivasya Vatsa Mahabala. Hey Vatsa Mahabala. Hey my dear brother, Mahabala, you're so powerful. You go to this Sugriva, and you tell him about how angry I am. You carry my anger to him. And this is a function of Guru. Guru carries the anger of Krishna. There's a saying that Guru Rushta Hana Krishna, that if you offend your Krishna, there's no problem. You can take shelter of Gurudev. But if you offend Gurudev, even Krishna can't protect you. So Lakshman's acting as Guru. He's representing Lord Ramachandra, and now he's going to Sugriva, and he's very angry. In the same way that sometimes Guru becomes angry. That anger that Guru has doesn't belong to Guru. Guru on his own, he's not angry for himself, but when he sees that someone is disobeying the desires of Krishna, someone is offending the devotees, someone is misbehaving in a bad way, they become very angry. And so Lakshman, he went to make a visit to Sugriva. And as he was going there was like smoke coming out of his ears. His eyes were bright red. His body was shaking. He was extremely angry. And Hanuman and Tara, Sugriva's good wife, they saw Lakshman coming, and they ran to Sugriva and they said, there's a problem coming, that Lakshman's coming, and he's really in a bad mood. He's really angry. You got to do something. Sugriva became frightened for a moment, but he was so drunk that the next moment he just forgot all about it. And again, he was just rolling on the ground and laughing and things. And it was a big problem. And so Lakshman came, and Sugriva didn't come out to greet him. And Lakshman became furious. And then he could understand, he could see what was going on, all the half-dressed, beautiful monkey girls running here and there. And Sugriva being with all those monkey girls, and Sugriva drinking all this alcohol and things. And Lakshman took his bow in his hand, and he twanged that bow. Lakshman, one of his expansions, is Ananta Sesh, which holds up all the universes. He's worshipped by Lord Shiva, who destroys the universe by meditating on him. That same Lakshman twanged that bow, and all the three worlds began to shake. And at that time, Angad came running forward. Angad was the son of Bali. And Angad, he approached Sugriva and said, look, you got to do something. But Sugriva couldn't even get it together to go and greet Lakshman. And so then Angad went there, and Tara, the wife of Sugriva, went there, and they spoke on his behalf. And this is a very beautiful principle that I want to come back to in a little bit. And they told Lakshman. Lakshman was so furious. He was ready to kill Sugriva, without a doubt, because look, Lord Ramachandra helped him. And my Lord, now he's crying, he's feeling so much separation from Sita. And he gave this rascal Sugriva everything. And what's Sugriva doing? He's just getting drunk and forgetting all about him. It's a big, big offense. We think if we have someone in the temple who's not following the principles properly, someone who's not going to Mangal Arti, it's a big scandal. When Govardhan Prabhu was the temple president in Detroit, it was a big scandal. And some of you, you're living there in Michigan, you must know the story maybe better than myself. But he wasn't chanting his japa, he wasn't following all the principles. And the devotees became very disturbed because this principle is there. They don't have the sense of forgiveness. Rather, they have the sense of rules and regulations because they're new persons. They have this symptom of religious conversion. And so they were criticized. How can we have someone who's the temple president who's not perfect? I mean, you guys are fortunate in Ypsilanti because you have someone who's perfect, right? You're very, very fortunate. And we'll speak to you later on, Dave Madhav, about donations, okay? You're very fortunate there that you have someone who's perfect. Okay, I'm being a little sarcastic. But they couldn't tolerate that here's someone who's supposed to be the leader. And that's the nature, actually, of a person who has low consciousness. We don't see that in the case of the Brijbasis. Who was the king of Braj? Who was in charge? Well, Krishna's the king, but who's over him is Kamsa. And they're paying taxes to Kamsa. How could they pay taxes to someone who's killing babies, who's such a rascal? How can Narad Muni go and give respects to Kamsa? Narad Muni is supposed to be a great devotee. Oh my God, how can he do that? So sometimes neophyte devotees have this kind of crisis because they can't see how they can give respect to someone who's not following properly, just like Sugriva. But Angad didn't have a problem with that. And that's an amazing thing because Sugriva had Angad's father, Bali, killed. And Sugriva then was made the king. Angad had every reason to be inimical and angry toward Sugriva, but he wasn't because Sugriva is in charge. And I should respect that position. And we'll come back to this point, very, very important point. So Angad and Tara again is the wife of Sugriva, they went to Lakshman and they said, look, it's okay. Actually, just a little before you came, Sugriva sent out some message to call all the monkeys to come together. He had some good advice from Hanuman and from Angad and Tara to call all those different monkeys together. And when Lakshman heard that, he calmed down a little bit. And then Sugriva came out there and he begged apology, please forgive me. This is a similar thing. This happened at the time of Srila Prabhupada, not once, not twice, but many times. And even with sannyasis, even with temple presidents. It happened with this devotee, Govardhan Prabhu. The devotees complained, how can we have him as a temple president? Prabhupada said, no, you keep him as president. He's a good manager. Srila Prabhupada liked him, and he wanted to keep him as a manager. He maybe wasn't so good as a sadhak. As a devotee, he wasn't following principles so well. He wasn't chanting so well, but he received the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. But the devotees were a little too neophyte to appreciate that as the most important qualification. In the language of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they're bahirmukh, or external persons. The external person sees everything they see things in terms of that. But the antarmukh devotee, the internal devotee, they look to see how much mercy has that devotee gotten from Srila Prabhupada? How much mercy have they gotten from Krishna and Guru? A good example in this regard is Jayananda Prabhu, who once he told Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he said, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the Gayatri mantra correctly or not. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, well, tell me, what are you saying? And Jayananda Prabhu said some kind of snigger, snick, boop, boop, whatever. He said some jumbled words. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj's eyes got real big. And he said, maybe we should go speak with Srila Prabhupada. And he took Jayananda Prabhu into see Srila Prabhupada in San Francisco. And he said, Prabhupada, Jayananda Prabhu, he has a problem pronouncing the Gayatri Mantra. And Prabhupada said, how are you pronouncing it? And so Jayananda Prabhu, he spoke his pronunciation of the Gayatri Mantra. And Prabhupada's eyes became very big. And then Prabhupada just started laughing. And Prabhupada said, anyway, that's okay. You just chant Hare Krishna. So Jayananda Prabhu is one of our saints. Not because he knew so many verses, or because he pronounced Gayatri Mantra perfectly, or he was a perfect smarta, but because he got the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And we should learn to see like that. And so Sugriva, he got the mercy of Lord Ramachandra. And Tara saw that, Angad saw that, even though Sugriva was responsible for having his own father killed. Angad saw he got the mercy of the Lord, and Lord Ramachandra wants him to be in charge. So let me accept that. Let's look at a historical example of this, which I find very interesting in terms of this COVID case going on right now in this pandemic. If you study, I have a godbrother who's quite a good historian. He's a scholar, historian. And he told me that he's researched the writings of our Goswamis and the devotees' writings at that time. He's a Sanskrit scholar. And he said that at that time, there were the most terrible types of injustice going on. You had Islamic rulers coming in and torturing to death Vaishnav devotees, breaking deities, taking the deities from the temple and putting the deities under the step of the mosques, using the deities as a weight to weigh meat, breaking we went to Samarkand in Uzbekistan some years ago, and there's a beautiful mosque there which is built from stones from Krishna's Janmastan in Mathura. They went and they broke Krishna's birthplace and took the stones and made a mosque. They carried them, like 1,000 miles or something to Kazakhstan and made this crazy mosque, which is still there today. But the interesting thing to me is, and my historian friend pointed this out, you don't find any mention of that in the writings of our Goswamis. There's no mention. Rupa Goswami doesn't speak about it. Sanatana Goswami doesn't speak about it. Baladeva Vidyabhushan, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they don't speak about those things. They were going on, but they didn't speak about it. It wasn't obviously very important to them. There was something which is much, much more important. Now let's look at a more recent case. Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. There were great injustices going on in India at that time from the British. But in their writings and in their preaching, you practically don't find any mention of it because they didn't consider it to be very important. Rather, they just accepted in the same way that Narad Muni accepted Kamsa as a ruler of Mathura, as a king of Brajmandala. He's in charge of that. They accepted him in that position because the Lord gave him that position. In the same way, the Brijbasis were offering respect to Indra. But Indra was such a rascal. In the same way that the Vanavas were giving respect to Sugriva. But Sugriva was a drunkard. He was going with so many women, but he had this mercy from Lord Ramachandra. It's a very, very significant point. Very interesting thing. Similarly, in the Bhagavatam, in the 27th chapter of the 10th canto, we hear about the exchange between Krishna and Indra. A very, very fascinating thing. Indra, let's bear in mind, now we spoke about Sugriva. Sugriva did something really bad. Okay, now let's be really honest. I'm sorry to pick on Dave Mahaprabhu. I really love to pick on managers and leaders, and he's so tolerant and humble, he lets me do it. So I get. So some of you may not like this guy because he's power hungry and he's a super controller, and I don't know whatever you say about him. Maybe it's true. I don't know. But he's nothing compared to Indra. Trust me. He's really nothing compared to Indra. What did Indra do? Now, I wrote to one of my friends at the Vrindavan Research, the Vrindavan VIHE, the Vrindavan Institute of Higher Education, recently, and I asked him for some of the rules that they have for the students, and he mentioned to me that they started these rules when one of the students punched another student in the face. So they decided we have to do this. Just recently, Hare Krishna, I saw someone posted something where one devotee just a few days ago murdered another devotee in a community on the East Coast in America. These things go on, and what a horrific offense. When we hear something like that, we want to cry. We're so disturbed. But why don't we become disturbed about Indra? What Indra did is a million times worse than what happened in this case a few days ago on the East Coast there in America, where one devotee was murdered, a very terrible thing. But Indra decided he was going to mass murder all the Brijbasis. And he sent the Samvartic cloud, which is thousands, millions of times more powerful than the biggest atomic bomb. You can imagine if someone puts a bomb in the ashram, someone gets really fried with Jai Gore, so they put a bomb under his car or something like that. What a demoniac, terrible thing that is to do. But that's nothing compared to what Indra did. Indra was going to bomb all of Braj. And he told the Samvartic clouds, I want you to go there. I want you to kill every single animal. I want you to kill every single tree and plant. I want you to kill all the cows. I want you to kill all the children. Kill all the mothers. Kill all the men. Only one person you should not kill. And that's Nanda Maharaj. Jiva Goswami speaks about this in Gopal Champu. He said, I want you to go there and kill everybody, but don't kill Nanda Maharaj. You save him for last. And let him watch everybody else die. And after everybody else dies, then you should also kill him. That's off the charts, demoniac. It's inconceivably how demoniac that is. And so we know the story of Govardhan Dharna Leela, how Krishna humiliated Indra and how Indra came to his senses and realized, wow, I kind of made a big mistake. He went to Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma said, you did what? Don't look at me, man. I can't help you. And told him to go to Surabhi. Because in such a case, when you've made such an offense, you need to go back to your roots. You need to be honest and real. And that indicates Surabhi. You have to go to the cows. You have to go to the earth. You have to be grounded. You have to be honest. You have to be yourself. And so Indra went to Surabhi and put Surabhi in front of him. And they approached Krishna. And Indra Surabi said some things. Look, he didn't really, he was kind of stupid. He was intoxicated. He was also enamored by his wife, and he become puffed up and this and that. You got to forgive the guy. And then Indra came forward and said, yeah, I kind of sort of made a big mistake. Please forgive me. I kind of sort of tried to kill all the Brijbasis. And what did Krishna tell him? All right, this is a monumental case. This is much, much worse than anything that Dave Madhav has ever done. I'm sorry, I'm not speaking on his behalf, but I'll tell you very frankly, it's worse than anything any leader has done in our society. And what did Krishna tell him? Gamyatam shakrabhadram va kriyatam me nusasanam stiyatam swadikareshu yuktar va stambhavarjitai. He told him, Gamyatam, now you can go. It's okay. I'm satisfied. You can leave. And he told him, Shakrabhadram va, all Bhadra, all good fortune to you. You have my ashirvad, my blessing. You just tried to kill my mother and father. You tried to kill all my friends, all my cows, kill all the trees and everything in Braj. You tried to kill all the gopis in Radharani. And now I'm saying, Shakrabhadram va, all good fortune to you. This is what Krishna's telling Indra. He said, now, kriyatam me nisasanam. First thing he told them, you can go. In other words, as we'll hear from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he said, get out of here. You don't belong here, as Jiva Goswami explains. Kriyatam anusanam. You go now and you follow my instruction. And what do? Stiyatam swadikareshu. Swadika, this means your own swadika, your own behavior. You should follow what you have adhikar for, what you've been given an instruction from. And stiyatam, you remain in that. You go and do that. But you do that yukta stambhavarjitai. You do that in a very sober way. And stambhavarjitai, give up your false pride. Now, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his Artha Darshini, says some very interesting things about this verse. He says that, he gives a little lesson in Sanskrit grammar, that the word vaha here is plural. Krishna is addressing Indra in a plural form, and Vishwanath says that he's doing that because the instruction is not just only for Indra, but it's for all the demigods. Look, you guys, you're supposed to be my representatives. You're like the GBC. You're the temple president of Ypsilanti. You're a demigod. You're in charge of all these things. So you're the demigods. Now you guys should understand this. You go, do the service I've given you. Krishna told him, Kriyatam me nasasanam. You execute my order. Stiyasam swadikareshu. You stay, you continue in your position, but yukta, he says, there means to be sober. And don't have any false pride. Vishnu says that Krishna's telling him, otherwise I'm going to punish you again. And he says it's an interesting thing that Krishna did not promise that Indra wouldn't become proud again later on. Because later on, when Krishna went to steal the Parijata flower from the heavenly planets on behalf of his wife, he's a henpecked husband. Satyabhama wanted that Parijata tree. Krishna went there to steal that tree. Indra showed his pride again. So Vishwanath says that it was a necessary thing. Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnav Toshini says there's like a conversation going on here. And in effect, the word gamyatam, which means you may go, indicates that Indra had requested Krishna, now can I just stay here in Vrindavan? I kind of sort of made a big mistake. But I realized that my big mistake, and now I've realized that your Braj Leela is the topmost of all the pastimes. And I've come here with a Sarabi cow, and I've offered some really good prayers. They're in the Bhagavatam. They're great prayers. You can recite them. And so now you should let me stay here in Vrindavan. And Krishna said, Gamyatam. No, go away. You go to your place. He says, because there, Jiva Goswami says, you'll find some safety. What does he mean by that? There's no safety in Braj. Braj is the most safe place. Krishna just proved that just now by holding up Govardhan Hill for a week. but you'll find real safety somewhere else. Uh-huh. And he says, furthermore, that Krishna released him from fear. Uh-huh. But Jiva Goswami goes on to explain that for real devotees, that wasn't real safety. Uh-huh. Because it's outside of Braj, it's away from Krishna. Then why is Krishna telling him to do this? Uh-huh. Krishna saw that he was reluctant to go. Krishna wanted him to. Indra wanted to stay, but Krishna saw you're not qualified to stay here, and if you stay here, you're only going to make more offenses. So you should go somewhere else. Sometimes we have to do that with devotees. We work very, very hard to do outreach, to touch the heart of other people, to love them. And really, that's what preaching means. It means to love somebody. And when they see that this person really cares about me, then we capture their heart and they come in the temple. But then if we see that they're making offenses in the temple, and especially if they're offending the devotees, just as we're reading this letter from Srila Prabhupada, I've noted your several complaints against the devotees, but it would be better to set the example rather than to criticize the defects of the devotees. We should always remember that we recruit members from people in general, and it's not expected that they're all going to come to the proper standard right away. We should remember that. But if someone can't get that through their head, and they're just seeing in such an external bahirmukh way, and they're committing offenses to the devotees, then sometimes very reluctantly we have to say, maybe it's better that you leave. And therefore Jiva Goswami explains this word gamyatam, that Krishna's telling Indra that you should go, because this is not a safe place for you. You don't have to be afraid. He released him from fear. What was the fear that he had? Well, I've committed a great offense. It's okay. And Indra had this other fear. Maybe now I'm going to lose my position. I'm not going to be the temple president of the universe anymore. It's okay. You have your position. And Krishna assured him. Not only did he tell him to go, and he said, Kriyatam anusasana, do my order, but he said, Stiyatam swadikareshu, you stay, you be fixed in that. So Jiva Goswami is explaining because he wasn't qualified, because he had this pride. This is a very important thing for us to understand. Srila Prabhupada created our good fortune. Our Guru Janas have created our good fortune. The Vaishnavas have created our good fortune. But if we all of a sudden become big, big devotees, and we forget about where we've come from, we forget that we used to wear Levi's jeans, and we had long hair, and we were dancing in rock and roll concerts and whatever. We forget about where we come from. Then punar mushika bhav, we may again become a mouse. We may again fall down. And so in that situation, sometimes it's better that they have to leave the association with the devotees. And Jiva Goswami goes on to explain their conversation between Indra and Krishna. Krishna is saying it's better if you go. And Indra is saying, but my Lord, even if I go, I'm going to commit offenses, because that's the nature of having powers. Now let me quote something, one of my favorite quotes from dear, what's his name? Damodar Dira? Dear Damodar Maharaj. Yeah. Dear Damodar Maharaj. Somebody can correct me. I'm terrible with names and things.
Krishna Kunti is reading Bhakti Dear Damodar Maharaj.
Bhakti Dear Damodar Maharaj. Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you, Krishna Kunti. She always helps me out. So Bhakti Dear Damodar Maharaj, she made this brilliant comment. What is the difference between Lord Brahma and Haridas Thakur? Right? Haridas Thakur is Lord Brahma. Right? And what's the difference between them? Well, if you read in the Bhagavatam, Lord Brahma became sexually agitated for his own daughter, Hare Krishna. Let's not talk about that in ISKCON. We have our problems with such things, right? He was sexually attracted to his own daughter. But Haridas Thakur, Maya Devi personified, came and said whatever she said, hubba, hubba, hubby, whatever she said to him, made her indecent proposal. And Haridas Thakur was completely unmoved by her overtures. So what's the difference? And Bhakti Dhir Damodar Maharaj makes this brilliant comment. He says, Lord Brahma was a manager and Indra wasn't. Such is the curse of being a manager. We wrote an article called Curse of the Dog. You can look up in one of our Bindu's magazines, which speaks about the curse of being a manager. It's a very, very difficult thing. But it's not that we're hippies. It's not that we just want to get rid of Govardhan Prabhu from Detroit. Srila Prabhupada said, no, he's a good manager. He should stay there. It's not that we just want to get rid of Sugriva. It's not that we just have a rebellion against Indra because, oh my God, Indra tried to mass murder all the Brij Basis. But no, Krishna gave him something. Krishna told him, you do this service. You be a manager. So, but Indra then said, my Lord, look, I have this problem. Because I have this big position, then it's going to make me proud again, and I may make some more offenses. And so then Krishna tells him, you do as I've instructed you. He tells him, Stiyatam swadikareshu, that you stay fixed according to your own responsibilities, according to your own adhikar. Do what you've been given to do. Don't try to be a Brijbasi. You don't have adhikar for that. Don't try to be a sadhu like Narad Muni. You don't have adhikar like that. You're a manager. You do that. Kriyatam me anusasana, because I'm telling you. He said, but you do that yukta in a very sober way, vastamba varjitai, and you give up this stamba varjit, this false pride. Stamba also means, stamba is one of the different asasaptikara bhavs, which means to become like a pillar, become stunned. Maybe the word stunned comes from the word stamba. And it also means a column. So someone who's so proud, they become stunned. And they become dull, like a pillar. So Krishna tells him, no, you go. Don't try to imitate the Brijbasis. You act with great attention. The word yukta, he says, Jiva Goswami explains that Krishna's telling him, you be attentive to what you're doing. Don't have any pride. Give that up, stamba varjitai. But he says that actually giving that benediction wasn't really mercy. It was just common sense. That's all it really was. It was just some instruction with logic. This is what Jiva Goswami is explaining about it. Because Indra couldn't have anything more. In the language of my Guru Maharaj, in the language of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that's cheating. And there's two types of mercy. We have kripa and we have vanchana. Vanchana means cheating. Sadhu gives one of two things, mercy or cheating. And here we see that Krishna is actually giving cheating to Indra. And Jiva Goswami explains because Indra didn't have the potential for complete mercy. Now Sugriva, he had the potential for complete mercy. Because Sugriva realized his position, he fell down on the ground and he's ready to do anything for the Lord. He had that understanding. Whereas Indra still had this thing within him. He still wanted to be the guy in charge. Sugriva was in charge, but he was in charge on behalf of Lord Ramachandra. And he was just doing that as a service for the Lord. It wasn't anything for himself. And that's very, very exalted. And therefore Sugriva is an eternal associate of the Lord, whereas Indra is not. And Jiva Goswami goes on to explain, because Indra didn't have the potential to get complete mercy, he got this kind of cheating, and he wasn't able thereby to follow completely Krishna's instruction, because Krishna told him, Stambhavarjitai, give up this false pride. Indra couldn't do it. He was really attached to that position. Jiva Goswami says, because of that, Indra later on again committed an offense. When Krishna showed up and said, hey, my wife told me to come here to get this parijata tree. You said, let me have it. And Indra fought against the Lord. But Krishna is so merciful. Kavi Karnapur and under Vrindavan Champu, when he speaks about the exchange between Krishna and Indra, Krishna, he says that Krishna spoke to him in such a sweet way. Krishna told him, he said, so Indra, is your anger now pacified? Do you feel better now? You were so angry because we didn't worship you, and instead we worship Govardhan Hill. Is your anger now pacified? Tell me truthfully. He said, because you're really close to me. Don't hide the mood of your heart. He said, I didn't defeat your anger out of revenge or enmity. I wanted to show how your actions were full of false pride, because I can't tolerate to see my devotees possessing false pride. And therefore, I gave you mercy by stopping the sacrifice. So don't be angry with me, please, Indra. Please forgive me. This is what Krishna's telling him. Indra just tried to kill all of the Brij Basis, and he's coming before Krishna to apologize, and Krishna's apologizing to him. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, when Rupa Goswami speaks about the different qualities that Krishna has, one of them is Priyamvada. And he defines that, Jani Krita Paradhepi Santvavadi Priyamvada. That Priyamvada means that you speak sweetly even to someone who's offended you. Indra has committed a huge offense, but Krishna spoke in a very sweet way to him. And then Rupa Goswami gives a brilliant example of what Priyamvada is. Priyamvada. He says that when Krishna told Kaliya to leave Braj, now he had to tell him to leave because Kaliya was poisoning everything. Can someone please mute yourself, whoever it is? I don't know. Thank you. When Krishna had to tell Kaliya, look, you just got to go. You can't stay here in Braj. Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that although Kaliya got so much mercy from Krishna, there was one thing he didn't have. He had Krishna's footprints on his head, but he didn't have the mercy of any of the Brij Basis. And because he didn't have the mercy of the Brij Basis, he couldn't stay there. Similar thing with Indra. Please, everybody check and make sure you're muted. If you don't have the mercy of the Brij Basis, you can't stay in Vrindavan. So Krishna had to tell Kaliya, look, I'm sorry, you got to go. And this is what he told him. Rupa Goswami gives a verse like this in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Krishna tells Kaliya, he said, look, it's nothing personal, but I take care of the cows, and you're really poisonous, and you're going to kill the cows, so you got to go. I'm sorry, it's nothing personal. Please don't be angry with me. This is the nature of Krishna's dealings. And we hear in this pastime of Sugriva that it's not just that Sugriva is approaching the Lord, but Tara is approaching the Lord, and approaching Lakshman. Hanuman is approaching Lakshman. Angad is approaching Lakshman. In a similar way, there's a beautiful story we find in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he went to South India, and he told the devotees that I'm going to go by myself. I don't want anyone to come with me. And the devotees, they begged him, you please bring at least one devotee. You bring this Krishnadas. And Mahaprabhu agreed, okay, I'll bring Krishnadas. And the same similar thing that happened to Sugriva happened to Krishnadas. He's directly with the Lord. But Krishnadas, when the Bhattacharys, these kind of gypsies in South India, they did a whammy on him or something, that they did some kind of tantric thing, and there were some beautiful gypsy girls there, and he became attracted somehow, even though he's in association with the Lord, he became attracted to that girl. And Mahaprabhu personally had to go and bring him back. And then he brought him back to Jagannath Puri, and then he told the devotees, you can take him, you can do whatever you want with him, but he has to leave because he fell down like this. So what did the devotees do? What would we do in such a situation? If some leader fell down, and we see it, I see it every day on Facebook. Somebody had some problem with this or that. There was some terrible thing. They did some terrible mistake. It's never been as bad as Indra's mistake. I can tell you that for sure. It's usually not as near as bad as a mistake that Krishnadas made. But somebody made a mistake and everyone wants to kill them for it. And nobody wants to be able to forgive them. The devotees got together in Jagannath Puri, headed by Advaita Charya and the other devotees. And they called for Krishnadas and they said, look, we want you to go to Navadvip to give some news to the devotees in Navadvip about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's travels in South India. Now, why did they do that? Because they had compassion for Krishnadas. because they saw that Mahaprabhu doesn't have compassion, but we should have compassion. And if he goes to Navadvip and he tells Sachi Mata, I was with your son, and this happened, and I saw him do this, I saw him defeat the Buddhists, I saw this happen and that happen, Sachi Mata is going to cry, and she's going to give so much mercy to Krishnadas. They could have done it themselves. What a great service to go and console Sachi Mata and all the devotees in Navadvip. And they might think, who is this Krishnadas? He was just rejected by the Lord. But the devotees have more mercy than the Lord himself. I had this personal experience myself. I'll tell you a personal story in Bhubaneswar. I was sitting outside my Guru Maharaj's hut one day, waiting to see him. And all of a sudden his personal servant came running out and said, Guru Maharaj is calling you, come quick, like some emergency kind of thing. And I went running in to the room, and there was one of my godbrothers hysterically crying and grabbing, trying to hold on to Guru Maharaj's feet, and Guru Maharaj was kicking him. And Guru Maharaj told me, get him out. Get him out. And one of my other godbrothers came, and when we physically picked up this, we had to pull him out of there. And we took him to this other room. And it turned out he'd committed some big offense to Guru Maharaj. He said, Guru Maharaj, before I was initiated by this guru, and he fell down, he was attracted to men, and how do I know the same thing's not going to happen again with you or something? It was a terrible offense to your guru. And I remember when that happened, Guru Maharaj, then he called for all the devotees, and there was a meeting. And he told the devotees, he said, so this devotee committed a great offense, and he should be rejected. And what do all of you think? And this happened in Bhubaneswar. Everybody was quiet. And finally one of our godbrothers stood up and said, that guy is such a rascal, and he's this and that, and he should be rejected. And everybody again was quiet. And finally I stood up. And I told everybody the honest truth. I said, he's better than me. Although he committed a big offense, who am I? He's not better than myself. I'm worse. I've committed so many offenses, and we should forgive him. And somehow my words affected the devotees, and they agreed to forgive that devotee. So sometimes these kind of things happen. A similar thing, I heard this story personally. Actually, Radhanath Maharaj personally sat down with myself and Chandramauli Maharaj, just the three of us, and he told us this beautiful story a few years ago here in Jagannath Puri about Srila Prabhupada's godbrother, Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, and how on one occasion there was one brahmachari who was living in the temple who fell down with a woman. And the devotees went and they informed Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, who is a Singha guru, who's a very, very heavy person. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta called for that brahmachari. He said, you did this? You fell down? And that brahmachari started crying, yes, Guru Maharaj, I did. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta told him, you can go anywhere you like, but you can't stay here. And that brahmachari started crying, Guru Maharaj, please, no, out. And he kicked him out. And can you imagine what a sober, heavy situation that was? So that brahmachari left. No sooner did he leave, just a minute or so after he'd left, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta turned to Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj and told him, bring him back. Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj was the temple president. And he became confused. He said, Guru Maharaj, how can I bring him back? You rejected him. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, just as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rejected Krishnadas, but the devotees showed more mercy to him, so you should also give more mercy than your guru. You should go and bring him back. So this is our system. My Guru Maharaj used to say that your only qualification is your disqualification. And Baladev Vidyabhushan, therefore, he describes the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Most of you probably heard me speak about this. I won't go very deeply in it, but I want to finish with some comments about this. He titled the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, one of my personal favorite chapters, Vishad Yoga. Vishad Yoga means the yoga of lamentation. Vishad means lamentation or suffering, unhappiness. It's the yoga, it's the way that we connect with God through unhappiness. But Bishad is also a compound word. It's two words put together, Bish and Ad. Bish means poison, and Ad means to accept poison. In other words, to accept the reality of our situation. Or we might call it as one Mataji calls the ecstasy of insignificance. When we can deal with reality and we can understand our fallen position and we can cry and thereby take shelter of the devotees. Those devotees are Krishna Kripa Srimurti. They're the embodiment of Krishna's mercy. And Jiva Goswami in Bhakti Sandarbha says that actually Krishna himself does not have mercy. Because mercy comes when you feel some sympathy, when you feel some pain in your heart, understanding the suffering that someone else is going through. But Krishna is full of ananda. He's full of great happiness. He doesn't know what it means to suffer. So Krishna doesn't really have mercy, but he does have mercy. His mercy is there in the form of the devotees. And it's a very, very important principle. So in our spiritual life, we all experience problems like Sugriva's experienced, like Krishnadas has experienced, like Govardhan Prabhu has experienced. We all stumble, we all fall down. But that stumbling and that falling down, if we can embrace it, then it becomes Bishad Yoga. Then it becomes a yoga, a way that we connect with the Lord. When we embrace it and we identify with that, when we accept that, then we can get the mercy of the devotees. Because without getting the mercy of the devotees, we don't have anything. We might be the king of the heaven, the planets, the original temple president of the universe. We might have Krishna's footprints on our head like Kaliya. But if we don't have the blessings of the Vaishnavas, we can't stay in association with the devotees. So when we speak about these problems in spiritual life, the stumbling and falling down, and how these are actually assets on the spiritual path, indirectly it means that we take shelter of the devotees of the Lord. And by acknowledging our problems, then we get mercy. And therefore Srila Prabhupada wrote in this letter, I have noted your several complaints against the devotees, but it would be better to set the example rather than criticize the defects of the devotees. There's no reason to criticize them. That's not our position. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta wrote a letter to one disciple. He said, I'm paraphrasing, but I could post a letter if anyone's asking for it. He said that, why are you taking on the unpleasant task of finding fault with the devotees, with the disciples? He said, that's my position. That's my job. Why do you want to do that? That's the position of Guru. So why do we want to take that unpleasant position? Let someone who's been given that position by Guru, by higher authorities, they have that position, and they may be Indra, they may not be perfect, they may be Sugriva, they may be like Kamsa. But still we can give respect to that. And there's more important things to focus on in life than to imagine so many conspiracies and Kamsa's doing this, Kamsa's doing that. Actually, if you study in Vedic literature, there are a number of people who found conspiracies. Hiranyakashipu was very much conscious of conspiracies against him. Ravan was very much conscious of conspiracies against him. Kamsa was thinking all the members of the Yadu dynasty were against him. That's the nature of demons. But you look at the Brijbasis, even though there was a conspiracy, beginning with Putana and Trinavarta and all these terrible demons who were coming to Braj, they didn't see like that. Rather, they gave respect to Putana as a devotee. They gave respect to Vatsasura. They thought he's a calf. He's one of the devotee calves. They gave respect to Pralambasura. They thought that he was actually a devotee. They didn't criticize him. They were taking shelter of Krishna. Could you turn on the light behind me? Not the big tube, but the one behind me. So this is the mood of the devotees. And again, I'd like to look back. This is the example that we see with our Goswamis. Even though there were so many terrible things going on with the Muslim invaders in Braj, you don't hear about that in their writings. They weren't focused on that. Why should we focus on all these negative things? The world needs something positive. We need a positive solution. If the devotees are also freaked out and the devotees are also going around saying, well, actually Trump won the election and democracy doesn't work, and you know the Democrats cheated, and COVID doesn't really exist, and Bill Gates is actually the devil, and we're spouting off all kinds of crazy ideas and things, which, by the way, they could even be true. I don't know. But if we're focused on those things, then where is the solution? Where is the shelter for people? People are crying right now. They need shelter. So I want to stop there. And when I see Ananda Murari Prabhu, I see Vaisheshika Prabhu in him. And you inspired me. These last few words inspired me something from Vaisheshika Prabhu about preaching and that. I'd like to stop here and ask the devotees if there's any reflections from anybody. If you don't mind, let me read Ananta Gauranga Prabhu, our dear friend, who's from South America, Jayapataka Maharaj's disciple. He's some of your godbrother, and he does Harinam very wonderfully in Mayapur, and he's our dear friend. He was taking part in our Sangha there for quite a time. He's saying, I'd like to ask how it is that as devotees, still we feel surprised or affected when we heard, as you mentioned, that a devotee was murdered, or this or that devotee did this or that. On the other hand, you mentioned that Indra by far did more terrible things. What should we learn from this lesson? Well, we can learn from the residents of Vrindavan. The residents of Vrindavan, they're simple. And when a terrible witch came dressed as a devotee, they didn't try to examine her. They didn't say, well, where's your credentials? Are you okay with the CPO? Not that there's anything wrong with the CPO. But what did you do before? They didn't. She was a big-time child molester. They didn't try to investigate that, but they accepted because she's dressed like a devotee. Now, that doesn't just mean we should be stupid and just anybody who comes in the temple, we accept them. They weren't stupid. They were taking shelter of Krishna. And someone who's not taking shelter of Krishna is only taking shelter of the CPO, with all respect to the CPO in ISKCON. If they're only taking shelter of the CPO and they're not taking shelter of Krishna, that person is stupid. That person doesn't have good intelligence. Krishna will always protect us, more than the CPO, more than the police. And it doesn't mean that if somebody does some terrible child molestation thing, my personal feeling is we should just give them to the police. Let the police work it out, because we're not set up for that. But the devotees in Vrindavan, they didn't see that. They didn't consider themselves to be the judge of others. It's such a beautiful thing. If the temple president is there, he has to judge other people. He has to say, why didn't you come to Mangal Arti? He has to chastise people. The leader has to do that. The mother, the father has to do that. The guru has to do that. But it's an unpleasant, thankless task. Why should we want to do that? But as long as we're full of Rajagun and Tamagun, then we want to be a big, big devotee. We want to imitate Indra. We want to become envious of Indra. And then we want to try to judge the devotees. I hope that helps Ananta Gauranga Prabhu. And then we have Mani Gopal Prabhu, who's written to me. Both of them written to me directly. Mani Gopal Prabhu is also your godbrother, Jayapataka Maharaj's disciple, from Mayapur, wonderful devotee. His father is one of the main pujaris for Lord Jagannath there. He says, my humble pranams. Thank you so much for such a deep and amazing katha. I learned a lot of things today to apply personally in my life. Sorry, who was the acharya that told that Krishna doesn't have mercy, but he has his mercy in the form of the devotees? Jiva Goswami of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. That was Jiva Goswami. It's in Bhakti Sandarbha. And if you want to write me, I could send you that section later on. And Madhupati Prabhu made a comment. He said, once, Madhupati Prabhu, for those who don't know, is our dear friend from Hungary. And he says, once some tax inspectors came to Krishna Valley dressed like devotees because they wanted to trick them. Hare Krishna. Okay, anybody else have any reflections? Nanda Murari Prabhu, I'm channeling your Guru Maharaj, you know. We have to have reflections at the end of the talk. So Nanda Murari Prabhu has his hand up. Can someone unmute him or
Hare Krishna.
hear something from Hare Krishna?
Thank you so much, Prabhu. It's extremely heartwarming to be with you and to hear from you and see you. So thank you so much for.
I'm so happy to see you. I haven't seen you in so long. We miss you, Prabhuji.
Yeah. I'm also just really appreciating. I'm currently reading Ramayan also. It was very nice hearing from these pastimes you're sharing about Sugriva. and two things I was reflecting upon is just one throughout the Ramayana, how the intensity of duty, even in spite of like clear injustice, right? So like this whole thing with Kaikeyi and how she's clear, it's just, I mean, everyone sees the injustice that's being done, yet Ram is so steadfast in his determination for some higher principle. And so the tension that adherence kind of brings about. And I thought of that in relationship also with Indra, as Indra was kind of he was wanting to stay. He had kind of this ideal situation. He's like, oh, if I stay in Braj, that's where the devotees are, and I'll be a good devotee. And I'm realizing, oh, I really want to be a devotee, or whatever he was thinking. He was thinking, I want to stay in Braj, but Krishna says, no, go somewhere else because you'll be safe. It's not safe here, essentially, like you had kind of pointed out. And I've been thinking about sometimes how if I become so preoccupied with what my ideal situation would be, what with kind of this lofty version of who I think I am, or like who I want to be in terms of a devotee or some kind of respect, that I miss the profundity of what Krishna is actually providing for me in my given situation. And so like with Indra, really he had this kind of, huge idea of like, oh, I'll stay in Braj. But he was missing, actually, not only was he not qualified, but Krishna was actually giving him another service. And he had missed like the point of that because he was becoming proud of that situation also.
Jiva Goswami seems to indirectly indicate also that there was mercy available for Indra in the form of Krishna's instruction, which more or less, to put it in a simple way, was you go and preach. You maintain Dharma in the universe, and which is also exactly why he sent Kali away. Kali, now you go and preach. That's another story. But Indra, the problem was he didn't do that. He didn't focus on that. So if we go and we do that preaching, there's mercy in that. And we can enter into Vrindavan in that way. We can stay in Vrindavan in that way. That's my humble thought. So, and another reflection on your reflection that came to me, we've also been hearing something about Ramayana recently. And recently I was hearing about when Lord Ramachandra returned to Ayodhya, what did he do first? The first thing he did, he went to see Kaikeyi. And he offered obeisances to Kaikeyi. And he said, Mother, please forgive me. And he spoke in such a sweet way. And he called Bharat. First thing he saw Bharat, he told Bharat, you come with me. And Bharat said, yeah, where are we going? Just come with me. And he went to see Kaikeyi. And he he told Bharat, I want you to forgive your mother. That's the first thing. That's the heart of Lord Ramachandra. That's the heart of the Lord. It's the beautiful thing. Even though she did what she did. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Anybody else with any reflections, anything?
Prabhu, you got a question in the chat there from,
okay.
I guess it's Karuna. It says Sharanagati.
Yeah. Who is it from?
Probably Karuna Sindhu Prabhu, but it says his
okay.
Sharanagati.
Okay. Why was Krishna merciful to Indra when he offended so many Brajbasis? The only way to get atonement for Vaishnava aparad is to approach the Vaishnava directly, just like Durvasa Muni or Jagai Madhe was not forgiven. That's a really interesting observation. And I don't know any direct answer from that from our acharyas. But one thing I can comment with confidence on in this regard, we don't know of any stories of Indra going and falling down at the feet of Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda and Radharani and Madhu Mangal and giving him some ladus or something, saying, look, please forgive me, I'm really sorry. We don't hear about that. But what we do hear about is that Indra took shelter first of Lord Brahma, who directed him to Surabhi. And then he came with Surabhi, and he was taking shelter of Surabhi. And so, in a similar way, Krishnadas, he didn't personally go to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We don't hear a description going, and Mahaprabhu, please forgive me, I realized I made a big mistake and this and this. But he went through the devotees. And by the mercy of the devotees, he was forgiven. That would be my reflection on that. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts. I haven't read anything directly, and that's a good point. Madhavi, Hare Krishna, so nice to see you there. She said, the kids are so loud here. I won't turn the mic on, but I wanted to thank you for the whole class. It really stuck with me. The point that the Goswamis and also our more immediate acharyas had so much political disturbance, but you don't see it in their literature because they just didn't see it as important. This is astonishing for me to think about. We're remembering this a lot. I don't mean to make any quarrel with anybody. I have some dear friends who are very concerned about different things going on in the world today, and they feel it's important to write about that. And maybe that's Krishna's desire to write, to act through them in that way. But I personally am more inspired to take shelter of the Bhagavatam and to give the Bhagavatam as a solution rather than to promote some political party or something else. I'm sorry, I just don't have faith in that. To make a comment about this, if I can say something about astrology, which is usually something I never speak about, but I have a few devotee astrologer friends and have also, somehow since this COVID thing came about, we came in touch with some predictions. First of all, there were a few astrologers who predicted the pandemic like 3-4 years before it happened, some good astrologers. And they also predicted, very interestingly to me, that this would be a period of mass confusion. And people wouldn't know what is true and what is not true. There's a number of astrologers, and I don't remember, I'm not an astrologer to tell you about the planets. It's something to do with Mercury, I remember that. Mercury, maybe Mars, or some about communication, that you can't tell what's truth and what's not truth. And then one of them commented in an astrological way that at this time, if saintly persons take shelter of any one of these so-called causes or conspiracies or anything, then the result will only be, it'll create more confusion, it'll create more problems. At this time, it's very extremely important that we take shelter of the Bhagavatam. We take shelter of Bhagavad Gita, because people they don't know where to go. And there's some of the comments here. Let's see. Madhavi, she says, excuse me, I don't know who this is, Saranagati. Prabhupada says in his purport to Gita 321, I'm jumping down past Jai Gaura's comment. I'm going to go back to that. People in general always require a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. Lord Chaitanya said that a teacher should behave properly even before he begins teaching. One who teaches in that way is called a charya, or the ideal teacher. Therefore, a teacher must follow the principles of Shastra, scripture, to reach the common man. It is interesting that Indra, Sugriva, Govardhan, Dariprabhu got second chances even though they were not ideal leaders. Well, let's just say something really blunt, since I'm sitting here looking at the beautiful face of Ananda Murari Prabhu, and it makes me think about book distribution and Vaisheshika Prabhu. Okay, let's make a new policy in ISKCON that only devotees who are perfect, who are perfectly following everything, have not made any mistakes, can do book distribution. And nobody else is allowed to go out and distribute books. Ananda Murari Prabhu, unmute yourself. What is your impression? What will happen to book distribution if we make a rule like that?
It would stop dead in its tracks.
Yeah, because we're all basket cases. We're all mercy cases. And we should remember that. It doesn't mean that when we're going out and distributing books or when we're giving a class on Zoom, here I am, I'm so important. It doesn't mean that we're qualified for that position, but we're being given some opportunity. By being a pipe, something which can carry some message, some mercy, we'll be given a wonderful opportunity. But we should think, as Srila Prabhupada says in this purport to Gita 321, that if I'm going to be a leader, if I'm going to be a preacher, I should behave properly. But when I see other persons doing, then I should see, well, Prabhupada wanted Govardhan Dari Prabhu to do this service, even though he had some mistakes, he had some faults. Prabhupada wanted this, so Prabhupada's given him that. Lord Ramachandra wanted Sugriva to do this. Lord Krishna wanted Indra to do this. I see that instruction, and I give respect to that. Dave Madhav just commented, their consciousness of Bharat Maharaj keeping Ram's shoes on the throne. Yes. And let me go back here to Jai Gaur Prabhu. So in hearing about the mistakes of Indra and Sugriva, in some way we feel better about our own fall downs and stumbles, and we learn to love other devotees and not judge them for their shortcomings. Okay, yeah, you got it. That's my point. That's what we're trying to say today. We learn to love other devotees and not judge them for their shortcomings, but how do we learn to bounce back gracefully from our own mistakes and offenses? I hope this isn't too vague. Well, I think we should own our mistakes and offenses, and we should identify with those rather than living in an illusion and thinking I'm such an important devotee because they asked me to do kirtan, because Dave Mahaprabhu asked me to give a Zoom class, now I'm such an important person. Rather than thinking about that, I should think about my real faults. It doesn't mean that we go and we speak to everybody about all the mistakes that we've made and things, but we own it in our heart. And that's Bishad Yoga. And if we own that in our heart, then that'll reflect in our dealings with the devotees. We won't be arrogant and controlling with the devotees. We'll be humble and gentle because we'll see he's better than me. That's my motto. I've used that so many times with different devotees, and they criticize someone. I just say over and over again, well, he's better than me. That's all that I know. He's better than me in so many ways. He's better than me. And they just become quiet after a while. They don't know what to say. He's better than me. So we should own it in our heart. And if we do that, then we'll get the mercy of the devotees. And then there's hope for us. But if we just start living in an illusion because I distributed more books than everybody else, and they put my name on the Sankirtan newsletter, and they put me in charge of this temple, and I'm doing this Zoom class, man. I'm an incarnation. I'm this and that. Good luck. That's all we can say. We've seen examples of Sugriva and Indra who are much, much more qualified in every way than ourselves. Anybody else with any reflections or anything?
I wanted to go back, Prabhu, to the beginning of the discussion. I appreciated how you're framing out that tendency of, the new bhakta and the kind of conversion experience. And a lot of this critical psychology comes from the things that people learn in those early days and kind of hold on to as their identity as devotees. At the same time, we know there's a kind of positive side to that brainwashing, as Prabhupada called it, scrubbing the brain, the old impressions of a happy life and instilling somebody with the identity that now I'm a devotee. So where is how do you find the healthy side of that experience for people? I know something I have a conversation with friends about often is that ashrams these days don't really exist in their usual, classic expression within our movement. And you see that playing out with a lack of, integrity, a lack of backbone to some degree in people's practices. So how to bring in the healthy aspects of that experience?
Well, we have to be real. We have to start where we're at. If you want to go to Vrindavan, you have to start in Ypsilanti, and first thing you have to do is get out of your bed. But if you're thinking that I'm not going to get out of my bed and I'm not going to go to the airport in Detroit, I don't want to ride in the car to Detroit, I don't want to ride in a plane, there's all those people with masks on and stuff, I just want to go to Vrindavan right now. That's a fantasy. You can't do that. So we have to begin where we're at. And so in our relationships, it means we have to begin where our relationship is at. And there's a nice verse which I often quote in the 11th canto, which gives a kind of sutra for these kind of relationships. Parasparanu katanam pavanam bhagavad yasa. First thing is we should learn how to associate with devotees, not by talking about COVID conspiracies and politics, but by coming together and speaking about the Bhagavatam. And that should be paraspara, there should be back and forth. If there's no back and forth, then people, they won't develop faith in us, which is the next step in the verse. Parasparanu katanam pavanam bhagavad yasa. We become purified by that back and forth. Pavanam bhagavad yasa. By the yasa, the glories of hearing about Krishna. Pavanam bhagavad yasa. Mito ratir mitastustir nivita mita atmana. And then in that situation, we can open our heart up and we can talk about our bad habits and we can give up our bad habits. So the foundation of that, we want to, your question is how can we help them to give up those bad habits? We have to begin where we're at. We have to begin from our bed and take one step out of our bed before we can get in the car to go to Detroit, to get on the plane, to go to New York, to go to Delhi, to go to Vrindavan. We have to begin where we're at in our relationship with that devotee. And the place to begin is to have discussions about Krishna. But those discussions should be paraspara. Just as Vaisheshika very brilliantly is given, this is what, to me, it's one of the greatest gifts he's given to our movement. He's given this reflections. He's created this opportunity to have back and forth between the devotees. Because in that back and forth, it creates faith. Oh, you said this thing, but I don't know. Really, I have some doubt about it. So then let me speak it out. And I say a thing, and then you, no, it's okay. It's like this and this. Oh, really? I didn't think about it like that. Oh, that makes sense. And then I begin to have faith in the devotees. I begin to see their motivations as pure. Or what is this guy's motivation? He's giving a class just because he wants money. Or he wants people to listen to him. People aren't stupid. They pick up on that. And they're not going to have faith in you. You can't preach to them. But if they see you really care about them, you're not just sending them off to some course to become a disciple just in some mechanical way, an institution, that you care about that person. That touches their heart. You know all these things. I'm just repeating what I've learned from you.
Hare Krishna. I appreciate that's a wonderful answer. That reminds me of Chatur Sloki, Bodhayantas Parasparam, that back and forth, as you so rightly characterized, is what really develops that taste for someone else and that faith that pulls them through into the higher standard of behavior.
We should have formal lectures. I mean, we had a formal lecture today. That was my service. And there's some structure and things with it, but we should conclude that, as Vaisheshika gives us this wonderful gift, really one of the most wonderful gifts, I think, in our movement, by having these back and forth exchange. Brajabanita, she's commented that she really related to this point that devotees are more merciful than guru. They have to be. Jaigora has gone on. He said that you've said that we should own our mistakes. Does that also mean that we should publicize them? No. If you have some problem, if a brahmachari has some fall down with a woman, it doesn't mean you go and you start telling, well, I went to her door doing books and she started taking her clothes off and I saw this and this happened. And Hare Krishna, we're not interested in that. You might speak with your guru about some of those things. Our acharyas have described that in Upadeshamrita, when Rupa Goswami says that Guyamakyati Prichati, we should inquire confidentially. It means that we speak with someone that we have confidence in. You can only speak confidentially when you have confidence in the person. And that's not something you advertise in public. And if we all started like in the, what do they call those things, the Alcoholics Anonymous meetings or something, yeah, I went off the wagon and I drank a beer and I did this and this. If you start speaking like that in Bhagavatam class, then everybody's just going to go and drink beer. Maybe, well, Dave Madhav, we all have problems and he did this thing also, Hare Krishna. That we don't speak about those things in public, but we should own it in our heart. Sri Radha has commented, I'm seeing how whenever I've gotten into picking at others, I need to sit down to look at what I'm so disgusted at in myself that I'm trying to point at someone else because it feels unbearable to look at what I don't like about myself. What a beautiful comment. Thank you for sharing that. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says a similar thing in his commentary on Upadeshamrita. He says that when someone finds faults in someone else, it's really their own faults that they're seeing in others. Nanda Murari Prabhu comments, where there's love, there's no need for rules. Isn't it a fact? I mean, when someone gets married, Nanda Murari Prabhu just got married. So when you got married, did they tell you, okay, now look, don't beat your wife. Don't punch her in the nose. Don't steal her money. Don't break her legs. Don't rape her. Don't kill her parents. They don't tell you those kind of. But some people are so low class that you need to make laws like that. But those laws are not for human beings. They're just for very low class people. But for someone who's a real human being, who's dealing in an empathetic way with people as the Brij Basis deal with each other, you don't have to have all those rules and regulations. You don't have to say those things because it's just natural. Where there's love, there's no need for rules. Beautiful comment. Thank you very much, Prabhu. And Bhakti Reed Prabhu has commented, very nice point made, that in order to receive the mercy from the devotees, we have to accept our own faults and wrongdoings. I feel that being honest like this will produce the humility required in order to accept and acknowledge the devotee's mercy. Wow, what a beautiful comment. To accept and acknowledge. This is similar to what Jiva Goswami was saying in Laghu Vaishnav Toshani on that verse we're reading from the 10th canto, 27th chapter, that Indra wasn't qualified for the Lord's mercy. So we spoke about what is the Lord's mercy. The Lord's mercy is the devotees. So Indra wasn't ready to get the mercy of the devotees in Braj. He wasn't ready to accept it because he couldn't own his own mistake. He owned it to a certain extent. And he took shelter of Sarabhi, and therefore Krishna forgave him. But he couldn't stay in Vrindavan. And so this is a principle of community building. If we want to have community, we should own our mistakes. And those mistakes can be the pillars of our communities. That's a very nice comment, Reed. Thank you. Anybody else with anything? Okay. Anything? Yes? We have one person sitting here in the room. Her name is Anapayani Radha.
Thank you so much for this wonderful class. I just was thinking about this point, how devotees are more merciful than the Guru and the Lord. So, and I try to think about this from the perspectives of the person who has a fault or who committed offense or something. And I was thinking that actually this act, when devotees are more merciful, it's actually the moment when the heart of the person can be changed. So just was thinking about myself. So if I'm in this kind of situation and I committed offense and I feel that devotees more merciful than my
Can
Guru.
everybody hear okay? Thumbs up? Okay. Speak loud.
Yeah, and I see how devotees more merciful than the Guru or the Krishna. I cannot see him and how he acts, but I can see how devotees acts toward me. So this can change my heart. So I just was thinking about
Yeah,
that.
that's a very, very important instruction. Therefore, we have simple things which may be rituals sometimes. Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances and forgive me. Please forgive me for my offenses and accept my humble obeisances. We do that every day. It may be a ritual, but when we really do it with feeling, it touches the heart of the devotees. It's a really important principle. Thank you for that. Okay, anybody else with any other reflections? Otherwise, it's getting late. Thinking here. I was just, your comment brought something out of my mind, and I forgot what it was. But when we see devotees who don't own their mistakes, that's when there's problems in society, and that's when we have distrust. When we see, we don't really hate people for their faults, because we all came from, all of us were father rapers and mother eaters, and, we're beasts who ate our own mothers and did all kinds of terrible, inconceivable things in so many lifetimes. We can forgive that. But when we see that someone's actually being humble and being repentant, it's such a very, very important thing. And indirectly, I think also that points to, if we want to have that kind of community, it points to small groups, because it just doesn't work with a big group. Somebody, we've seen, some big leader falls down and has a problem, and he can't be forgiven by all the devotees. It just doesn't work. But in a small group, you can do that. In small groups, we can go deeper. Is a lesson we get from that. We can go deeper in bhakti. It's really important. That's one thing I really love about Ypsilanti. Again, and I'll tell you, if you guys aren't nice to Dave Madhav, you have an open invitation, Prabhu. You come stay with us anytime. I really love what you're doing. There's so much. When I read your comments the other day about the disciples course, I was jumping up and down. I was so very, very happy. Thank you for being so caring and so personal with the devotees. It's so important, even though it may be politically incorrect what you're doing, or politically correct, depending on who you're talking to, I guess.
You want to be parampara correct, so that's what I'm about. We have to thank you. I mean, many years ago, I got tuned into the reality, which was that my service really is only to try to facilitate the opportunity for whoever's here to connect to devotees like yourself. So I'm indebted to devotees like you for coming and giving our community so much. And even in this type of situation where we're all so far away and stuck and etc., you're going out of your way to come and speak something from your heart to ours. So we're all deeply indebted, and we thank you.
When you say that, it reminds me of somebody that I'm deeply indebted to, and that's Vaisheshika Prabhu, who was my good fortune. I met him after I'd been a devotee for a year or two, and he's always been somebody who stood up for Krishna Katha, pure Krishna Katha, and quoting Shastra and deep empathetic dealings with the Vaishnavas. It's such an important thing. We have to stress those things. And later I saw that in my Guru Maharaj. He once, one devotee came to him and said, Maharaj, what can we do to bring devotees back to ISKCON who've left? And he said, very simple. You just have nice Krishna Katha and nice Vaishnav dealings. And then everybody will come, because Krishna Katha is so beautiful, it's so attractive. But it should be real Krishna Katha. Not just, you know, today I saw a movie and it reminded me of this, or some psychological thing, or this or that. We may take points from those psychiatrists, and even from a movie or something. Prabhupada took something sometimes from, what's his name, that comic,
Charlie Chapman.
Charlie Chaplin, thank you. Everybody remembers that, right? We may take something from that, but we have to apply it in a very strictly Krishna conscious way. So thank you, Dave Mahaprabhu. I really, really appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thank you, Prabhu, for coming. And we hope
There's
to
a-
have you back again soon. And if you can come in in person, all the better. Otherwise, we'll all come see you in Puri.
I'll tell you, I like to come in person better because, you know, I want you guys to feed me. Well, this Zoom stuff, man, is crazy. You know, I want some prasadam.
We've got Gora's Grill now. We've got the restaurant reopened, so we want to try all the burgers.
That's the real deal. Let me read a comment here from Madhu Patibu from Hungary. It says, there was an ISKCON guru who fell down. I will not name him, but whenever I remember him, I say a prayer for him. I ask Krishna that when he dies, Krishna should only remember his service. Wow, Madhupati Prabhu, I hope you remember my good qualities also and be like that. Because that guru, maybe I know who you're thinking about. All I can say is he's better than me, and it's a fact. Okay. So thank you very much, Dave Madhav Prabhu.
Thank you so much, Madhavananda Prabhu, for coming to visit us. Thank you all devotees for your heartfelt contributions and all our guests today, so to speak. Thank you also for coming to ISKCON Ypsilanti, the Harmony Collective. You're all also invited anytime that you have the opportunity to come give us your association, please do.
Prasadam also?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone's got Gora's Grill. Gary will be happy to take care of you if you come and visit him there. Thank you, dear devotees. Thank you, Madhavananda Prabhu. All glories to the assembled devotees. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Vanchakalpadurubhis cha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Jai. Hari Hari.